Welcome back to Hardball and the Politics Fix. Tonight's roundtable, Bloomberg's Margaret Carlson, MSNBC senior campaign correspondent Tucker Carlson, the Carlsons, no relation, and Chris Cillizza of the Washington Post. Chris, you've got the wrong last name.
I should have known.
Let me go first to you. We've talked about Iraq. We just were debating Iraq. This is an excerpt from George Packer's piece in the New Yorker. It's called Obama's Iraq Problem. Obama has won the Democratic nomination, and Iraq, despite myriad crises, has begun to stabilize. With the general election 4 months away, Obama's rhetoric on the topic now seems outdated, wrote Packer, and out of touch. And the nominee, apparent, may have a political problem concerning the very issue that did so much to bring him this far. Chris, what about that? Is Iraq now helping John McCain, or at the very least hurting Obama out on the trail?
Well, Andrea, I've done a fair amount of reporting on it because I think it's a really fascinating question. What I found is actually counter to what George Packer wrote. I talked to a lot of Republicans and Democratic strategists, and they said this is essentially a win-win for Obama. If the war continues to look like it is not moving towards a resolution, if things remain unsettled there, Obama can say, look, we need to move out. John McCain wants to continue more of the same. If it gets better, if violence continues to drop, if it looks like stability has arrived, then the war drops off the radar as a national issue and Barack Obama still wins. And so I think that's there are certainly any number of ways to game this out, and Obama and McCain wouldn't be caught dead, frankly, talking about the politics of the war in Iraq. But I do think that the more that this national debate focuses on the economy, on healthcare, the more it is focused on domestic policy issues, not foreign policy issues, not personality, not resume, the better it works out for Barack Obama.
Let's talk about Obamacons for a second. Tucker Carlson, I've just confirmed that Colin Powell has met with both Barack Obama and with John McCain. And one was June 14th, the other was June 18th in his office. They came to him. What would an endorsement from Colin Powell mean? And first of all, Colin Powell was always very close to John McCain, as you know, and was one of his original backers before. Is it possible, conceivable, that he would be going with Barack Obama?
It's conceivable, and judging by things he has said, if you read into statements he's made recently, you get the feeling that he is a fan of Barack Obama's. I think it cuts both ways. By the way, Chuck Hagel is also in the list of potential Obama cons. That is a problem, I think, if he were to go for Obama. He was a close personal friend of McCain's. That's a separate question. I think, however, the former Secretary of State has the baggage of Iraq. I mean, his history over the past 8 years cuts directly against Barack Obama's message on the question of Iraq. It was his speech to the UN that sold the country, I think we all agree, on the war. And I don't know. It is a mixed message for him to become part of the Obama team.
But he's got a foreign policy credential, Margaret. Is he a plus or a minus? He would, in some ways, validate Barack Obama as someone who could be commander-in-chief. He projects all of that. He's got a strong following in the military and foreign policy circles, despite Iraq. No?
Well, number one, it would be huge news. So that, in and of itself, is something, because it still matters what he does. And even though Colin Powell did make a mistake on Iraq, or at least I think he did, I think he still is somehow above it, that he remains this iconic figure, having become the Secretary of State and done what he did. He's almost transcended that mistake. So I think it's a clear win for Obama. I don't think there's a real downside to it. And as for Hagel, I actually think the difference is that he's an elected official. I mean, he's been in the Senate with McCain. That's big in that here's his friend in the Senate, both Vietnam vets, if he goes with Obama. That strikes me as another big...
He was one of a very few number of senators who endorsed McCain early in the last time, in 2000.
It
was a divide, but the personal friendship between them, I've witnessed it myself, that would be, I mean, that would be a profound moment if you were to endorse someone other than McCain.
Chris Cillizza, when I remember at the 2000 convention in Philadelphia, Colin Powell's speech to that Republican audience, when he spoke out about affirmative action, the importance of affirmative action, and I was on the floor, and there were some Republicans who were actually booing or sitting on their hands. He's always been a little bit of a wrong fit, as much as a Reagan Republican as he is, and a George Herbert Walker Bush Republican. He never was a George W. Bush Republican.
Well, you know the thing I think that's interesting and important to remember with Colin Powell, Andrea, is we think of him in a political context. I'm not sure he thinks of himself necessarily all the time in a political context. We try and fit political ideologies onto him, a Bush Republican or an Obama con or something. I'm not sure he thinks of himself like that. He strikes me as someone who's much more motivated by personality. Remember, he has never gotten gotten into a presidential race, despite being courted any number of times to do so, frankly, by both parties. And I think that speaks to the way in which he makes decisions. I do think, though, it gets to Tucker's point about it's a mixed message if Obama was going to take his endorsement. I would say he would gladly take it, however, because at the core of Obama, even more than the war in Iraq, at the core of his messaging is change, post-partisanship, bringing people together, doing things differently in Washington. Having Powell on board in any kind of formal or informal role really reinforces that core fundamental message for Obama. And I think that's the real power of the Obama message at the moment.
I think right you are. We'll stay right there. We'll be right back with the roundtable for more of the Politics Fix. You're watching Hardball only on MSNBC.